What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the altar today, and today we are here with Mo'Royce of the Almighty Tragedy. Thanks for being here.
Oh yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. I have to say, I'm so excited, pun intended, for the release of I Am Woman, this amazing kick-ass tribute album. Thank you for giving us more new music. For people who haven't heard this yet, for the full thing, could Venus and I'm So Excited be a good representation of the entirety of this, or is that just the tip of the iceberg?
That's really the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the original band concept, of course, was doing heavy metal versions of the Bee Gees the disco era hits, right? And then from there we moved on to other decidedly unmetal, unhard rock songs to cover and metalize. So yeah, to say that these two singles are representative of the band or the whole album, they're not representative, but it is the tip of the iceberg.
Did a lot of people, am I the only one who assumed that I Am Woman was a Whitney Houston tribute in a way, or?
I don't know. Actually, the original working title was I'm Every Woman, the Whitney Houston Chaka Khan song. And we started working on that, and it was cool. It was just a little too clever, a little too cute, a little too jazzy, and it couldn't unjazz it enough. So decided we were talking about doing the song I Am Woman, the Helen Reddy song, and that fit, and that fits the theme of the album perfectly too. So we rolled with that.
Yeah, with the whole jazz aspect of it though, and your sound, maybe you could give it like a little bit of a Hanoi Rocks sort of feel in a way, like bring the Michael Monroe sax on it.
You know, the issue with that, and maybe we'll have another crack at it, because it's such a great song. Talking about I'm Every Woman, you know, especially the end, how the vocals really take off. I was like, really looking forward to doing that, and we did in our demo version of it. But yeah, there's something about the way the melody sat in the chords, and we could change the chords, but then that didn't work. But that happens all the time when we're working on albums. We throw out, I would say, at least half of what we work on for each album. But then sometimes we'll revisit it too.
As somebody whose first music was Whitney Houston, as well as artists such as ABBA, who I've heard you cover at the Monarch, which is awesome, and like a lot of that stuff, that was my first taste of music, and I got into metal later. I don't know if that was the same path as yours, but is that kind of like the sort of meaning into it, as in like you started off with enjoying this type of music and metal came in later on? I guess sort of like, how did the idea of making metal versions of this sort of come to fruition?
Well, we had the idea just as an idea on paper, actually. We got a call, the guy I started the band with, Barry Glib, who's no longer in the band, but we got a call. We were working on his album. I was producing his album. His band was called Children of the Unicorn. And we got a call from a promoter saying, hey, I'm doing a weekend of shows here at Irving Plaza, and looking for like kind of an unusual, entertaining kind of theme. You guys want to put something together for it? And we're like, yeah, we'll call you back. So we sat there over lunch, taking a break from a recording session, and we had this idea of like, let's do a metal tribute to something not metal, and we're throwing ideas back and forth, and then his eyes lit up, Bee Gees, and I was like, Bee Gees, and the wheels started turning. We call him back. We're like, heavy metal tribute to the Bee Gees. He's like, that sounds great. One condition, I have to be in the band. And we're like, what do you play? He's like, I don't play anything. So we're like, perfect. You can be like Robin, and you can stand there in the middle, no instrument, with your finger in your ear. And people wondering, what's that guy doing? So I don't remember what the question was. How it started.
You explained it perfectly.
So it started on paper like that, just like you could argue a terrible, stupid joke, pointless, worthless. But then we made a couple demos, and the creative inspiration was there to do this, and it just kind of took hold in us. And before we even did those shows at Irving Plaza, we started getting booked at all these other places, because like the promoter was like, hey, check this out, there's demos in this band, a metal tribute to the Bee Gees, and it just connected for us like that, and then connected with an audience. I remembered so distinctly walking on the stage for the first time, First show ended up being at BB King's, and we were supporting the Aquabats.
That's a hell of a good first show.
It was amazing. You know, walk out like sold out BB King's, and our spandex and our satin, and you know, jaws drop. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. Just from walking out, that's kind of nice. And then we start to play, and people realize, oh shit, that's a Bee Gees song, and see the reaction in that, and it was very inspiring. So, yeah, that was the path to disco metal, and then the theme, of course, being like why we're thinking, you know, why metal and why disco, was that like in the 70s, disco took over the culture, and then absolutely imploded and just became the biggest joke. And then in the 80s, hair metal took over the culture and then imploded and became the biggest joke. And so in 2007, when we started the band, both disco and hair metal were just a joke to people. And we thought it would be funny. And it was funny.
That's awesome.
But then it was so much more than that, too.
To me, like, I love, because I think tragedy really does stand for a lot of different paradoxes in a way, because people, when I first heard the name tragedy, you know, like the Napalm crew introduced me to tragedy, I was like, oh, okay, you know, band called Tragedy on Napalm Records, maybe like Theater of Tragedy, maybe it's sort of like a symphonic band or a doom band, and then I see you guys play at Monarch, and it's anything but that. So I feel like really the representation of tragedy is really things meaning to go one way, and then they end up going completely in a different direction.
I mean, tragedy, the opposite of comedy.
Yep, exactly.
There you go.
Or tragedy is born of or comedy is born of tragedy as well.
It's the yin and the yang. It's the balance that we all need in our lives. I don't know why I'm doing this for balance. Yeah.
Do you feel that maybe bringing a metal twist to these classic songs give it a new layer of meaning or type of context in a way, or do you feel that the songs still mean very much the same thing and it really is just a metal twist?
It's interesting because, like, on this new album we do I Will Survive, right? And that song, the original, she's working through her emotions, right? And she's over it. She's kind of telling you about how she worked through it. And she's good now, and she's great. And now she wants to dance, she wants to boogie, right? Well, when we take a look at it, we kind of deconstruct the song, and we try to stay very true to the lyric and a lot of the original intent. But then when you get into a song like that and the lyric, there's some really dark stuff in there. There's some rage, you know, a lot of anger and rage and fear. And so when we did that song, that particular song, we came at it from, well, we were true to the emotion of the lyric, but kind of dug in from a different angle.
Do you, because the music is, even though there is so much comedy and humor within your music and within the band, the music is very technically impressive. Those solos are not easy to pull off, the intense rhythms that's incorporated in it, as well as, you know, the sort of singing that's, the singing that's into it. It's really a force to be reckoned with. So even though there is a lot of humor in the band, is there like a lot of moment of seriousness when tracking these songs and executing them to achieve that technical excellence?
Entirely. I mean, we're very passionate about wanting to make it sound and feel awesome, right? And so many comedy or satirical musicians, you know, their product, it's fun. It's funny to listen to. You know, you share it, you know, with your friends or something like that, and they listen to it once and they laugh at it, right? But we want to make records that you'll appreciate more than once, that you can relate to on many levels. And the live shows especially really have a lot of comedy in them. And then, you know, us doing like She Bop, a song about, you know, women masturbating. Like it just kind of is funny for us to be doing that, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't feel like we need to be winking the whole time.
Fair enough. I mean, like, I think you have the best of both worlds with it as well. I think everybody could be you have the ability to make people laugh and also leave a lot of people impressed at the same time. Because sometimes the comedy can override in a way where, like, you know, it's like, okay, but, you know, show us some cool solos in a way. I think you kind of satisfy both worlds, you know?
Yeah. It's and I feel like the bands we're touring with right now. We finally found, we're going out with Steel Panther in the U.S. and Nanowar of Steel in Europe, and it's like we're finally getting out there with bands who kind of take the musicianship very very seriously, but deliver some comedy gold as well.
You got to do a tour with Guar one day. I mean,
Oh yeah.
after that Kansas cover that they did back in the day, which I think was like 10 or over 10 years ago, I think that's a match made in heaven tour right there.
I think so. I don't know if I'd say heaven, but maybe the other place.
When it comes to deciding what to cover, does the song that you're picking have to hit you in a specific way to know, okay, we're covering this song, we're not covering this song, or do you just kind of like pick it out of a hat and randomly decide?
Well, we try to find songs that are kind of part of the DNA of society, right? Songs that just if you say the name of the song, people will know it and they think about it and they'll think about their reaction to it. They may hate it, but so that they're familiar with it, because what we're going to do is we're going to turn it upside down. So it's really good if you know the original, so you can kind of appreciate how we've turned it around. But it's wonderful when we find a song like "It's Raining Men," where it's like you say to somebody, "Hey, we're Tragedy and we're going to do It's Raining Men," and just the concept blows their mind. So always looking for songs like that are very rich in meaning and some kind of meaning, like if it's super kitsch or whatever it might be, then it's really fun, a really fun one for us to take on. But there aren't that many songs like that, so we end up looking for things. Well, we feel like our job is to find the inner metal in every song we do. So sometimes it'll just occur to me, you hear the songs that we do, you hear when you're just out and about, you're shopping at the supermarket and there's that music going on. And like for instance, we're doing Lay All Your Love on Me by ABBA on this album. And, that song's been around forever, and I've heard it forever, but then one day it was like, wait a second. That song's so metal. How did I never think of this before? So it's kind of like it's similar to songwriting like that,
I think in the end, like, sure, people could say, well, it is covers, but to bring your own, it's one thing to cover a song note for note for note and staying true to the original, but there's also something to be said of putting your own spin on it, whether for humor or otherwise. I think that takes a whole layer of talent, because you have to sort of look at the song that we know and love, but envision it differently. And then in the end, it's pulling things apart and putting it back together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, another band that does the ABBA covers really well, Amberian Dawn, they have a whole album that's dedicated to like that ABBA thing. I think it's a Napalm thing. Before you know it, Napalm is just going to sign the original ABBA, which I think would be awesome. When it comes to laying down this material, though, together, do you all prefer to cover this song for the first time as a band, or does it usually start off with, somebody listening to the song and laying down the riff progression, or has it sort of like been approached from many different angles?
It has been approached from many different angles, but for the most part, it starts with somebody in the band making a demo.
Okay. Is there ever a time where your own personal emotion or your own personal interpretation is like, because in the end you are making your own version of it, you're putting the tragedy twist on it. Is your own emotion sort of factored into it as well? Or do you kind of try to keep the same emotional vibe that the original song had?
Well, try to stay true to the intent of the emotion of the original song. But like I said about I Will Survive, sometimes we just will approach that emotion from a different angle, or we'll highlight a certain emotion that's in there that maybe wasn't highlighted in the original.
There has been, and I love the way you were putting it, because disco started off, being huge, and now it's been kind of a meme, and the same with 80s metal. It's been like that with a lot of music. I mean, I think it's been that way with new metal. It's been that way with emo. It's been that way with grunge. It's been that way with so many different genres. Could you almost see Tragedy in the future, like doing this with other genres as well? I would love to see you guys make fun of an emo song or like a Limp Bizkit song or something.
That would be amazing, but could we do it at like grunge meets like indie rock or grunge meets boy band? There you go. Got it.
If you
You're
do
welcome.
if you do an NSYNC cover, people's heads will melt.
Yes.
We got to make that happen.
Yeah. I mean, we are kind of the boy band of metal right now.
Which I think is awesome. Everybody needs one. There's a couple. Another good band you should tour with is Electric Callboy. Did you ever listen to them?
Oh yeah. Love those guys. Of
Yeah,
course.
they just are doing their first North American tour. Get on that.
They are. They're kind of a boy band of metal, aren't they?
Yeah, I think I don't know what the hell you call that band. There's something else.
Well, for us, we have 4 singers, so we're we're more of a man band, really, at this point.
A man band.
Yeah.
The fathers of NSYNC in a way, maybe, or
Well, we're in sync, but grown up
the Backstreet Men.
and more muscular.
Yeah, and honestly, more talented too.
Yeah, we rock harder. I'll give us that.
When it comes to the live energy that's channeled into it, having 4 singers and, the way that you execute this live, and I saw you at the Monarch, it was a truly fun and special experience. Is there a similar energy that's channeled into your live performance as you do when you are songwriting, or do you consider, writing, laying down the material and playing live 2 completely separate forms of expression?
I appreciate the Freudian slip of calling it songwriting.
Yeah.
Because it really does feel like that when we're rearranging everything. And that's coming from a guy who wrote songs his whole life. There's a lot of thought put into the live shows. The live shows have a chance to develop when we're on tour, though. There's a lot of kind of group energy put into the live shows, like the thought behind the live shows, because when we're on tour, we do the show and then we talk about it the next day, and it's day after day after day after day of doing that. While in the studio, I produce the album, so I'm in there working on it every day, but then sometimes someone like the drummer's not gonna be in the studio with me for months at a time. So there's just a lot of full group collaboration that happens in the live shows, and I think that makes it's like a how many ring circus. It's a 6-ring circus. It's madness up there.
And when I see you guys with Steel Panther, it's going to be at Irving Plaza, which is like a much different type of venue and stage than a place like the Brooklyn Monarch. Do you think that maybe the type of venue you're in also kind of changes the vibe of the tragedy experience?
Yeah, I mean, Irving Plaza, and the venues we're playing this time with Steel Panther, they're bigger, but they're not arenas. So like, it still feels like a club playing stuff like that.
Yeah.
You still have some kind of intimacy.
Yeah.
And that it is, but it is really different. Like like playing festivals where there's just people, you can't see the end of the crowd. And then even the closest people will be, hundreds of feet away or something, like whatever it is, with the barricade. You don't get that immediate energy coming back at you. But I think the Irving Plaza kind of venues, like we played a lot of those in our early days, and yeah, it's nice because production is fantastic. Stage is nice and big and everything, and but it still feels like a club.
Yeah, I think in the end, regardless of where you're playing, you have to have that little bit of club mentality too. Do you almost feel like you have to practice crowd interaction and stage presence as much as you have to practice the material itself?
I wouldn't say we practice it, but we definitely nurture it. It's definitely an important thing to us. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is kind of like a silly question, but like going by the identity of Mo'Royce, is this sort of like an alter ego or maybe even a character that's portrayed on the stage and in the album of Tragedy in a way? Or is it just sort of like, I won't give away your real name, but like, is it sort of like a direct extension of who you personally are?
It's both, really. And it is like that for all of us. Yeah, it's funny. Our drummer who was with us for many years used to say that our stage personas are like the ideal rock star in our own minds. That's how we are on stage. And then I was watching the Kiss documentary, and Paul Stanley said almost verbatim the same thing. I mean, those guys have been stealing from us.
Motherfuckers.
Yeah, come on, sparkly flying V guitar. That was my idea.
Fucking Kiss, man. Yeah, and they have the audacity to try to patent these.
Oh yeah, yeah, but he throws in the thumb. That's nice. That's a nice touch.
Yeah, well, that's I love you in sign
Yes.
language. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, now whenever, people who speak sign language communicate with each other, they owe Gene Simmons money. I think it's pretty fucked up.
Is that sounds like something Gene Simmons would do?
Stealing from deaf kids,
Yeah.
motherfucker. But, so, on that note, before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for coming over today. And I'm so stoked to see you guys on the Steel Panther Crowbot tour. Just anything else with Tragedy that you'd like to promote for the release of I Am Woman in terms of other tours coming up or other music or videos? This will be uploaded by midnight, so don't say it here if you can't talk about it now.
Okay, so new album, I Am Woman, out March 3rd. Couple singles out now. Another single coming out right before the album drops on March 3rd. And 6 weeks on tour across the U.S. with Steel Panther, then a month in Europe, UK, and Spain, and Portugal, and France, and then it's not even June when we come back. That's just the first half of the year.
Wow, so we got a lot more to see from Tragedy in the future.
That's right.
Yep, I'm pretty sure there is stuff that's happening. Knowing how touring works, you probably, every band is already booking into 2025 at this point. So
Maybe we are.
Who knows? You ain't saying it. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Tragedy, I Am Woman, March 3rd via Napalm Records. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time. Oh wait, it goes like this, right? Sorry, Gene.